House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.
Okay, everybody, you know, one thing is absolutely inarguable on this wonderful program that we call House to Home. Liz is still in Alaska, right, Liz?
Oh, I'm in Portland. I'm heading back tomorrow.
Okay, well, okay, maybe about 700 miles like to the south. Oh, Portland's wonderful. Go to a Trailblazers game once the season starts, and go to the go check out the Roses. Gina is downtown, working as hard as she always does. I am sitting here thinking of really interesting edge niche topics, and you can already see Gina laughing because I was suggesting to my wonderful lady. By the way, ladies, happy National Sisters Day. You guys are my real estate sisters. And if you didn't know, yes, that is a thing. And to your children and to your grands, happy National Sisters Day. So the topic I want to talk about today, you know, we were talking about like the little markers, right, that actually demarcate your property from public land or from somebody else's property. What happens if those things become
survey points, yeah.
oh, thank you, the survey point. What happens if those little like caps become broken, dislodged? What if somebody comes around and, you know, like they're tampering with them, and for whatever reason they get lost? Can I, as a property owner, can I just go out and buy some and put them back, or do I have to have a surveyor do it again?
It has to be a surveyor. And we talked about that last week, that the survey caps, those plastic caps that are on top of the markers, are critical because it shows that that was marked by a licensed surveyor. So we've had situations where in their yard or a bulldozer was doing work on the property and they knocked off the boundary markers. That is important, so that if you were putting up a fence or if you're going to sell your property in the future, you want to make sure that whatever you're doing is within your boundary point. So those markers are very critical. And if you're selling your property and your markers are missing, or they got yanked out by the neighbor or someone, you do need to pay to have a surveyor remark your boundary points, because that's the official, that they're registered and licensed to do that sort of work. Anyone coming onto your property to do it, they're not licensed, and they would, if I were buying property and Jason, you told me that, hey, this is the marker, I won't believe you until I walk the points with a licensed surveyor.
Okay, so if I just happen to take right, if I take my bottle cap or something, like from my soda or my energy drink, and I put it down there because because I'm cheap and everything, I could not only be falsifying that information, could I possibly get in trouble, Gina?
Well, yeah, absolutely. If you're the seller and you're telling an owner that these, a potential buyer, that these are my markers. And sometimes, we've had occasions, especially with the older homes, where the seller will walk us around the property. And I had this recently where the seller walked me around the property and say, that coconut tree, that's where the marker is. And then it goes down to the lemon tree in the back. That's the end at the back. And then it goes across to this tree. So yeah, it happens.
Guam directions are the best.
It happens frequently. And I can understand, my parents did the same thing with their home. My dad planted coconut trees where his markers were supposed to be located. But, as professionals, when we go through a property with an owner, we do strongly recommend that you get a licensed surveyor to provide. Number one, there's two things with surveys. They're going to mark the actual corner points of your lot. So they will put, what Liz explained, they're going to put a cap on a rebar. So the cap identifies who the licensed surveyor was. They have a number. Like my number in real estate is 253. That's my license number. And so the surveyors have a number and it's on their cap, and they put that cap on top of the rebar. But here's the deal. This is our experience. It isn't just your neighbors that may accidentally move it, or you when you mow the grass. With time, what happens is as it rains or we have a typhoon,
Sure.
Sometimes
an earthquake, perhaps, yeah.
Or anything. But I find mostly what happens is with just regular rain and just, the environment, I've seen where these markers will get buried with mud because they're on the ground. They're not raised up.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking if they become dislodged. You're actually talking about if they become submerged. It's the opposite.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It actually
All
gets
right.
buried by dirt. And then the thing is, you see where it is, but over time, vegetation then will grow over it. And pretty soon you go back and you don't remember exactly which spot. And I actually had this happen where
Where it
the
is.
owner was doing construction. Yeah, she was actually physically doing construction. And the backhoe dislodged her markers. And so what
Ooh.
she did is she remembered where the markers were supposed to be. So after the clearing was done, she took the rebars with the cap and she put them back where she thought the markers were. And she built a house because now she could see it again. She stuck it back in the ground where she believed they should have been. She built the house, and years later, I think maybe 4 years later, we sold the house. And then after she had sold the house, or during that period, the owner asked her to have the markers redone because he insisted on looking at it with a surveyor. And when she had the markers redone, we found out that the markers were only 3 feet away from the house. And that was against the law. You have to have 8 feet on the side. So we discovered that she put him back in the wrong place, and she didn't even expect that that could happen because she's a contractor. She's very wise about these things, but yeah, that's against the law. Number one, the law says you can't touch these boundary markers. It's
Okay,
actually
now
against the law. The owner can't do it.
now I'm paranoid, lady. So Liz, I mean, how robust are these caps and these markers? Because I mean, do they just, can they just come loose from, from casual bush cutting that I do? And I mean, we're talking about theory.
Definitely,
How
yes, they
realistic
definitely
are these things coming out?
they have definitely come loose. And over time, just bear in mind, they are plastic. And I've seen some of them crack, and I've seen some of them come away. Now, that's why we always tell the owners, try to mark that with, let's say, because surveyors can do 2 things. They could do a rebar with a cap. They can also do a concrete marker, which has the cap embedded in concrete, and they put that in place. Of course, that costs additional for the surveyors to do that, but that's another mechanism that they utilize, either the rebar cap or a concrete post with the cap embedded. So that's another way they can do it. As Gina puts it, yes, those markers do vary. There's a case where the property owner measured and knew where the markers were, but it was buried because the neighbor bulldozed their property and pushed dirt onto their property. They had to dig around to find where it was sitting. So again, we emphasize to landowners, make sure you know where your markers are. And if you don't, you may want to hire a surveyor, because even though grandpa or grandma or your mom or your dad said, hey, these are your boundary points, they may not necessarily be the case. And the other thing I want to bring up is when a surveyor goes out to mark the points, they normally utilize reference points. And they would mark a reference point and measure it from that point to get to your point. Sometimes they use a number of reference points to get that. And Gina and I have also experienced where there have been disputes over boundary points because 2 different surveyors are using 2 different reference points to get to where the boundaries were. So
I guess
anyway,
I'm just gonna
that's
have
for
to
that's for another show.
Okay, Gina, we'll end with you because I guess I'm just gonna have to reserve to say I know that very few things in life are forever. I mean, love is forever and friendship is forever, and this show will be forever because we're gonna do this like, until kingdom come, right? But how long, if I'm a property owner and I just built a house and my surveyor's gone there and then put down the markers and everything, LASIK eye surgery lasts for about 10-15 years. Plastic surgeries maybe about 10-15. I've heard all sorts of things. How long can I realistically, Gina, anticipate my markers to be good for before I have to have them replaced? I'm okay with like being proactive like that.
Jason, it's like anything else. You maintain them. If you maintain the area, you don't ever have to have them replaced. I mean, as long as you maintain it. The problem is we tend to not do that.
Okay.
Once it's marked, I mean, I've got a piece of property that I've paid a surveyor to mark 3 times. The thing is, you maintain those markers and you don't ever have to spend money to do it again, but it's all about maintenance. It's just like your home. If you don't maintain it, it's not going to last forever.
Everybody
like
always tells you change your oil every 3 months on your car, and how many people do exactly that?
It's like everything in life. You got to keep it maintained, and then it'll last a long time.
How many of us floss every single day? I mean, I do, but
Okay, flossing and survey points. Got it.
there you go. Flossing and survey points. This went in a completely different direction, and that's why I love this show, because we get this kind of insight from the two of you, and we lost Liz, and she's in Portland right now having a blast. So there's good food up there. So Liz, by all means, indulge. Gina, thank you so much as always. We'll see you next week.
Jason.
Bye, everybody.
House to Home, presented by RE/MAX Diamond Realty.